secret Paleozoic era 538 million years ago on Earth began ancient life began to develop rapidly. The Paleozoic era Paleozoic lasted as much as 287 million years. The Paleozoic era was divided by scientists experience Cambrian Ordovician Silurian Devonian Carboniferous and Permian. Paleontologists around the world are trying to unravel the mysteries of that time. They use the most modern equipment and supercomputers capable of solve problems at space speed. Scientists like professional detective study finds that are several hundred million years old, and such work yields interesting results. This is what scientists think the rebirth of life on our planet looks like. Lands during this period, as before, continued to change, rose and sank underwater. Mountains were rebuilt. Climate life before rapidly developed, then experienced new catastrophes, introducing the most formidable hunters of the Cambrian period. Bullfighting. Some representatives of the species were more than one. Long dinocarids were most vigilant and fastest creatures of the Cambrian. But with weapons they are clearly bent. Their grasping appendages, despite their formidable appearance, were not as strong as pincers, and by themselves could cause damage to the sacrificial one, but only attracted it to mouth, which is located on the belly. Is another genus of large trilobites. Redlichiothus. This animal could boast that it had the first jaws the inhabitants of the oceans could eat only with the help of suckers. Redlichia could graze fancy, and so hunters' diet became more varied. Another predator lived in the sunset of the Cambrian period of Sydney. Giant cancer scorpions are the most large arthropods in history. Our descendants, thanks to revolutionary weapons, would be dangerous even for humans. Since bullfights are predatory trilobites, despite frightening. After the Cambrian came the Ordovician period. The diversity of animals of that time increased many times over. Ceras were giant cephalopods with a long straight shell reaching a length of up to 4 meters. Although there is evidence in individuals up to 8 meters long or more, it was one of the largest animals of the Ordovician. But with all its massive dimensions of Indoceras fed on plankton, the structure of the beak of Indoceras was too primitive to eat even small invertebrate. Ceras is another giant mollusk that lived in the oceans of the Ordovician period. Chamberteris reached a length of 9 or 10 meters together with the tentacles. This mollusk was supposed to have a length of 11 meters. This monster was also plankton like most modern whales, and some types of graptolites were colonial organisms that make up a significant part of plankton in the early Paleozoic. Our ancient organisms appeared in the middle of the Cambrian period, existed in the Ordovician, and died out only in the Carboniferous. The body of graptolites was a colony of creatures gaily resembling modern jellyfish. Graptolites were numerous in the early Paleozoic, especially during the Sardovian-Patagonian period. It was these creatures that made up the basis of zooplankton in the ancient seas, being passive filters of which carried currents. Some graptolites attached themselves to floating organisms in the seas of the Silurian period 420 million years ago. A powerful development of invertebrates, especially rapid and versatile development, is observed in corals, trilobites, brachiopods, cephalopods, crinoids, and other groups of animals of great development. Reach the group of horseshoe crabs of Iraq. Scorpions in the body of the goddess. Due to the huge size and the dash, the goddess was most successful predator of its time. This scorpion cancer had powerful claws with which he grabbed and held prey such as trilobites or primitive fish. Flat fin-like hind limbs helped Pterygotus, whilst one fellow Eurytheris was much smaller in size, on average a centimeter. Rs 20, but the largest specimen found was larger than 1 meter, and Reptiris possessed appendages bearing the spine and large oar that they used to swim. These animals were versatile species, and this is Eurypteritis, called carcinosome. Carcinosome had walking spiked appendages that were used to create a trap to capture prey. There was also a giant Anurus style that reached 3 meters in length. These cancer scorpions led a predatory lifestyle, eating fish and various invertebrate. Testolanurus had 4 pairs of legs. The limbs of the animal were long and horns were powerful and were capable of movement and, to a lesser extent, off-swimming Astraspus primitive vertebrate Ordovician and Silurian periods. Such creatures lived 450 million years back in the lagoons and shallow seas that washed North America. Part was covered with a strong shell consisting of dorsal and abdominal shields. Back half of the body was covered with strong scales, and probably in dead there were no fins in the tail lobe. In the early Silurian, a group of small fish, the so-called odontid, arose, which became the first predatory fish on Earth. The name acanthode means the prickly fins of these fish were attached to hard spikes, possibly in order to it was harder for predators to swallow. Ancient fish. A Devonian period began, the fourth geological period of the Paleozoic era and the continuation of the Devonian period of existence, having a spine, continued as before. Developed, although the rate of development was not the same as in the Silurian. A large number of fish with a heavy armored head, armored fish or whatever they are called, blockoderms in our time. To meet them is hard enough. But then a big number of fish of this species lived on the sea plume in lakes and rivers. Devonian period was the time of the greatest cataclysms on our planet. Europe, North America and Greenland collided to form vast northern. Over the mainland Laurasia formed wide swampy deltas, which created ideal conditions for animals who dared to make the first important steps from water to land. Devonian jawless fish agnates do not have real jaws and teeth. Their skeletons were not bony, but cartilaginous. However, most of them cover bony carapace of ostracoderm leal like loose swam in the water, filtering it or sucking in small organisms. Most ostracoderms were small. However, some species, chained in a thick shell, reached a length of 1.5 meters. Only a few jawless fish have not preserved any traces of a bone shell, or even bone plates. Both those and other lamprey predators mainly parasitize on othromyxin fish, eat the corpses of marine animals descending on the ocean. In the Devonian period, ferocious predators of Dunkleosteia appeared up to 3-5 meters long in the upper jaw. Instead of teeth, they had a series of small plates constantly in contact with the lower jaw. These plates sharpened or edged so much that the fish could, with both jaws, bite and crush prey. Massive armored heads. Dunkleostes flexibly articulated torso. They, opening their mouths, could throw their heads back. The Dunkleostests filled the lakes of the river and oceans hunting for prey that was once too tough for any predator. Whole body of adults ranged from 4.5 to 6 meters, with a mass of at least up to 1 ton at this time. Evolution gave rise to even more high-organized predators. Are sharks. Ancient sharks with wide fins and streamlined bodies swiftly cut through the waters of the Devonian seas. Their sharp teeth are constantly replaced by new rows growing behind the old relatives of the shark. Silently glided over the sea simultaneously with the sharks in the seas. An even more promising group of fish, bony fish, osteoichthyes. Most of the motor and fish in these fish belong to this group. While they grow cartilaginous skeletons, are replaced by bony fins. At the osteoichthyes are 2 pairs of chest and pelvic, which helps them move more easily. For example, they can bend, turn or break. One of the famous Devonian Steticans sharks. The appearance of this cant resembled a shark 70 centimeters long with its back. The fin of this fish had modified shape resembling an ironing board on the fin, and also on small spines were located on the head. At the end of the Devonian period, many groups of fish became extinct, as did numerous families of corals. Their place was taken by new species of animals. Carboniferous or Carboniferous climate of that time. For the most part, land surface was almost tropical. During the Carboniferous period, oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere more than doubled, reaching 35% in the Devonian period. The oxygen content was 15% per today. The amount of oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere reaches 21% more. Life of the Carboniferous was characterized by a variety of species of paraminifera that lived in that period, not where animal, plants, or fungi. The remains of these creatures event today. They form huge chalk deposits. From these deposits, chalk is taken, which is used in all educational institutions around the world. In the Middle Carboniferous, Schweigerins, a curved spherical shell of creatures, was the size of a small pea. From the shells of foraminifers of the late Carboniferous, and in some places limestone deposits were formed. Well-known corals began to form huge reefs during the Carboniferous at this time. Echinoderms develop intensively, in particular sea lilies and sea urchins, which occupied 4% of all genera of the Carboniferous. Very strong life developed by the end of the Carboniferous. Trilobites almost completely died out. This was facilitated by the fact that cephalopods and fish fed on trilobites and consumed the same food as trilobites. The body structure of trilobites was imperfect. The shell was not protected, the belly limbs were small, and weak trilobites had no organs. Attacks for a while. They could defend themselves from predators by rolling up like modern hedgehogs. But at the end of the Carboniferous, fish appeared with powerful jaws that gnawed their shelter for. From the numerous type of trilobites, only one genus has survived in the seas and rivers of the Carboniferous. Lobefin fishes were strongly pressed by cartilaginous fish. Lobefin fish also belong to a detachment of ancient sharks. Ancient sharks were not very similar to modern. It was the most numerous detachment of ancient sharks. The most interesting feature of this detachment is the tooth spiral. It was a long, soft rose on the lower jaw. Shark Compotus even broke the size of the record. Duntodestus, also known as sheer-tooth and shark or coal shark remains and estus were found in carbon deposits of coal. This is another of the prehistoric sharks that deprived paleontologists of peace and trying to understand their fossil. 6-meter Edistus belongs to the same ancient family as Bizarra helicopricon, also shares this unique tooth shape. Relatives of Destus are known to all helicopricon. The structure of the body of this ancient sharks remain little known. Helicopricons may have eaten fish. A second large detachment of carbon sharks is Semirids. The third and last a noteworthy detachment of Carboniferous sharks are xenocanthids. They were moderate large predators from 1 to 3 meters. Sharks bred intensively, and this eventually led to the overpopulation of the sea by these animals. Many forms of ammonites or exterminated. Single corals have disappeared, providing sharks with an easily accessible nutrient food. The number of trilobites was significantly reduced. All mollusks that had thin only thick shells from the periphery did not succumb to predators. Animals were preserved and products were protected from predators by long spixed vacant niche. Animals began to be occupied by small fish similar to modern chimeras, but more diverse. In addition to these main classes of fish, smaller fish existed in the Carboniferous class of rayfinfish and acanthotes in the lakes of the Carboniferous period. Arthropods, comprising 17% of all genera of the Carboniferous. Crustaceans, scorpions, insects that appeared in the Carboniferous. Insects occupied 6% of all animal genera in the freshwater basins of the Carboniferous. Lived in large numbers. A variety of fish. Some of the fish jumped on the muddy shore like modern fish jumpers, fleeing from enemies. Insects left the aquatic environment and settled the land, first near the swamps and lakes, and then the mountains of the valley and desert Carboniferous continents. Carbon insects were the first creatures up in the air. Insects did it for 150 million years before birds. Dragonflies became pioneers. Seen dragonflies turned into kings of the air coal marshes. Then this example was followed by butterflies, moths, beetles, and grasshoppers. The abundance of oxygen in the air allowed these creatures not to form a normal respiratory system. Insects continued to use trophies and feel no worse than other terrestrial arthropods. The only extensive order of insects of the Carboniferous were dragonflies. Representative smallest known species of insect was 3 centimeters long with a wingspan of the most large insects. For example, Instenadictate reached 70 centimeters and an ancient dragonfly Meganora's span reached 1 meter and body weight approximately corresponded to modern crow. The body of the Meganora had 21 segments. 6 segments had 3 segments thorax with 4 wings. 11 segments were abdomen. The terminal segment resembled the styloid continuation of the trilobite tail shield. Numerous pairs of limbs were separated with their help. Animals and walked and swam. Young meganors lived in the water, turning into adult insects as a result. The Meganeura had strong jaws and compound-iced six-swing hollow diction of the Terra, and the non-flying blat also lived in the Carboniferous Aptero, similar to modern cockroaches. Second large class of arthropods Carboniferous were arachnids. This class includes 3 orders of normal spiders and 1 detachment of scorpions. Arachnids of the Carboniferous reached very large size, record 1 meter, with the tail belongs to the Pullman scorpion. Scorpios is another species of arthropod that became very numerous during the Carboniferous period. These creatures were quite advanced at a time when spiders and scorpions were still at a fairly early stage in the evolution of the horseshoe crab since the Ordovician. Eking out a miserable existence in the shade, trilobites in the Carboniferous multiplied strongly and captured about half ecological inferior trilobites. Cancer scorpions began to lose ground but very slowly and gradually. Some of these creatures reached a length of up to 2 meters. The centipedes also gradually lost ground. Although the Hugilso about 2 meters in size in the upper Carboniferous period. Ancient insects became extinct. Their descendants were more adaptable, right-winged in the course of evolution, gave termites and dragonflies Eurypterus ants. Most of the ancient forms of insects passed to the terrestrial way of life only in adulthood. They bred exclusively in water, thus changing the humid climate. Drear for many ancient insects was a disaster among insects of the Carboniferous period. There are no bees and butterflies. This is understandable since at that time there were no flowering plants whose pollen and nectar feed these insects. First appear on the continents off the Carboniferous period. Animals breathing with lungs. The life of amphibians is closely related with water since they breed only in water. Warm, humid climate of Carboniferous extremely favored the flowering of amphibians. Their skeletons are not yet completely ossified. The jaws had delicate teeth. The skin was covered with scales. Scientists call it these amphibians with stegocephals. The stegocephals inhabited shallow lakes and swampy areas near the coast. Some of the amphibians may waited for prey half submerged in water in the manner of the crocodiles. Perhaps such animals were like giant salamanders that were formidable predators with hard and sharp teeth with which they grabbed their sacrifice. A large number of their teeth preserved as a fossil. Most animals had 4 legs with short toes. Some creatures had claws that allowed them to climb trees. Appear in legless forms depending on the way of life. Amphibians acquired a trident-shaped serpentine. A salamander-like form is possible. Many of them spent their lives buried. Villa microsaurs looked more like small lizards with short teeth with which they split the shells of insects at the end of the Carboniferous period. A new group of 4-legged animals. They were mostly small forms and in many ways resembled modern lizards. They were first reptilian reptiles on Earth, or rather the reptilomorphs of all reptilomorphs can be divided into 4 groups. In the first group included all synopsids. The first group consisted of onlipelicosaurs, which later split into several new groups. They were very advanced animals. Creatures already had normal wit. As representative of the first reptiles belonging to the synopsid group was Dilophosaurus. This animal resembled a huge lizard. Dilophosaurus had a high crest of long bone spikes on its back interconnected by a leather membrane. Adiposaurus was a herbivore animals and lived near coal marshes. Some of them reached 3.5 meters in length, and the mass reached 300 kilograms. By another group of cynicids there were pygmodonts. They were predators, the first of the 4-legged ones that grew along the corners of the jaws. Powerful fangs and carbon from this family, warily macromerian, with phenocodonts is known. Our distant ancestors from Themacurt, all mammals. Animal sizes ranged from 60 centimeters to 3 meters. Other, smaller representatives of synopsids were varanopods, and the most numerous species from the synopsids was the Ephiacodont. The size of the animal could reach up to 1.5 meters. Anthracosaurs are the most primitive of reptilomorphs, possibly the ancestors of all other groups. They did not yet have a tympanic membrane in their ears. Some anthroposaurs had a weakly pronounced caudal and ranged from 60 centimeters to 4 5 meters large Anthropogosaurus was the third large group of reptilians. These were real small lizards of all turtles, the distant ancestor of all the rest modern reptiles, as well as dinosaurs and birds. As a separate centimeter was a representative of Reptilomorphosecret Paleozoic era Permian 260 million years ago. The Carboniferous period ended and the Permian period began. The last period in the Paleozoic era. The Earth then looked something like this. Tectonic plates traveled all over the planet unnoticed by the standard human time, and there will be nothing surprising if in 200 million years, our Earth will look about the same. Interesting fact, during this period completed the formation of Pangaea supercontinent, huge superocean Pantellosa, occupying about 70% of the planet's surface, washed the shores of Pangaea. Second large Paleotethys ocean jutted into the shores of Pangaea from the east and west, reason for the relatively mild and humid climate of the coastal regions, creating refuge for moisture-loving terrestrial inhabitants of the last Permian period. Is the most devastating last 542 million years of mass extinction in the history of the Earth. The beginning of the Permian period was marked by glaciation on the southern continents and respectively by a decrease in sea level throughout the planet. However, with the advancement of Gondwana to the north, the land warmed up at the same time. It became very hot and dry in part of the territory of Eurasia, and their sprawling vast deserts in this period began to dominate to vertebrates. According to some sources, they included up to 82% of all those who lived at that time. Moment of animal birth. Foraminifers are rare. Sharp-plied number of sponges of echinoderm corals decreases. New forms. Arisobrachiopods living in our time in the Indian Ocean continue to exist. Bryozoans. These creatures formed reefs of significant development. Reached Crustacines. Ostracoder and worm-like cartilaginous fish were the most prosperous, a class of fish in the Permian period. These were sharks with teeth twisted into a spiral. Cartilaginous also included lamellar gillfish. Ancient rays. Freshwater sharks appeared with the beginning of the Permian period. Amphibians become a quite diverse small forms a few centimeters in size live next to the giant egg. Esters of frogs that reach the size of in the Carboniferous. The quadrupeds were about half of all vertebrates in the first short period. The proportion of these animals increased to 69% of all births. With the onset, Permian amphibians become quite diverse, adapting to terrestrial conditions. These creatures spent less and less time in the water. The most successful group were dark spondylus under the detachment to scaly, athis rater, thick and inactive animals with a massive head and a short tail. The length of the eusculls range from 40 centimeters up to 2 meters. Among the most interesting is the dress of hystrix, grown a folding sail on the back for thermoregulation, is a unique case among amphibians in the Permian period. An animal appeared that greatly interested scientists. This freshwater creature in the adult state practically did not differ from modern animals. The size of the predator could reach up to 9 meters in length. Another large group consisted of Leptospinels were small creatures. Up to 1 meter. Many of these animals have completely or partially lost limbs. This is Eropsin, of the most formidable predators of that era. Eriops was more than 2 meters in length. Reeps hunted smaller amphibians and reptiles, and possibly even fish. Very strange predators were Diplocalus and Diploceraspis. They were flattened animals with huge boomerang-shaped heads and eyes directed upwards. Apparently they hid in their silt at the bottom of the reservoirs, waiting for the prey to swim right under their heads. No one really knows why the heads of these predators were of such a strange shape. Perhaps in a fight they hit the enemy with their head-side impacts, or maybe it was a kind of hydrofoil that helped the animal to rise up after a while. The climate back in the amphibians with moist, porous skin had to take refuge in a few wet oases preserved among the deserts. Many of the animals died out on planet. Began to rapidly spread a new group of animals that were better adapted toward habitat. They were reptiles. The first reptiles were small and similar. All lizards. Creatures ate mainly arthropods and worms, but soon large reptiles appeared that hunted smaller ones over time, both predators and their victims. acquired large and powerful jaws to fight numerous enemies over time. The reptiles became larger and more ferocious, while amphibians, like their ancestors, fish, reproduced by laying eggs in water directly on land. The evolution of reptiles occurred very quickly because there were no animals on land that could compete with them long before the end of the Permian period. Reptiles displaced Stegocephalians. Primitive reptiles called catalosaurs gave rise to numerous descendants, subsequently captured water into land and air the size of a frog to a hippopotamus. Various creatures still had many signs of a labyrinth of dance teeth and ribs located from the neck to the tail. Short, massive limbs. Mood of the skull vertebrae of the skin already was the same as that of reptiles. Another animal occupied an Icopterosaurs. The size of these herbivores reached up to 3 meters. Parasaurs had in the shoulder girdle skin bones characteristic of fish. Amphibians was a solid bony box with holes for the eyes. These animals lived on the banks of rivers and lakes in the middle of the Permian period. The catalosaurs reached the dawn and became extinct. Actively developed at Permian. Reptiles adapted to a variety of living conditions. Most groups animals became more mobile, and the skeletons of creatures became lighter. These animals ate a variety of a diet consisted of plants, shellfish, and fish. Appear in the first predators. Pelycosaurs on the spines of these animals had high crests. Some reptiles' limbs lengthen, skin, bones, teeth disappear. Herbivores become flat. And such a 4-meter predator as foreigner Sauropod had real fangs. Among predatory reptiles appear forms similar to modern wolves, hyenas, and martens. This suggests that the imitative life of animals of that time and the present was similar to all Permian reptiles. Are divided into 2 classes of ancestors of modern reptiles. Animal-toothed mammals. Scientists have identified the most popular representative called Scutosaurus in the Permian period, a detachment of Mesosaurus separated from the terrestrial anapsids. These weird first reptiles returned to the aquatic way of life. The Permian Mesosaurs were small, measuring only up to 1 meter in size. Mesosaurs had needle-shaped teeth. Such teeth played the role of seta. The Mesosaurus was gaining a full mouth of small invertebrates or fish. Squeezed jaws strained water through teeth and swallowed all that was left in the mouth. 2 evolutionary bronchoni of the types of diopside Oreosolitis. One of the first attempts of evolution to make these animals survive the terrestrial lizard at dawn in Carboniferous in the Permian period. Gradually Archosaurus morphs, ancestors of crocodiles, dinosaurs, and birds. Animals are relatively large, up to 2 meters in the form of some. Begin to vaguely guess something similar to the dinosaurs. Of the first flying reptile was the Coelurosaurus, whose remains have been found in Europe and Madagascar. External reptiles resembled a modern flying lizard. The whole visor reached 40 centimeters, long wingspan reached 30 centimeters, light skeleton and skull. Reptiles reduced the overall weight of the body on the back of the head. The creature had a crest that improved aerodynamic qualities. In the Permian period were the ancestors of the lizard snakes. Lepidoromorphs. Primitive anthracosaurs were a transitional link from amphibians to reptiles in the first period. These animals have not yet become extinct. Alpha gradually came. The decline of life in length reached 2 or 3 meters, but most species were much smaller. By another large class of reptiles living in the Permian period were animal-toothed animals that belonged to Ophis species. Had fangs, incisors, and tuberous molars. Animal tooth were similar to mammals in the structure of the shoulder blades and pelvis. All this indicates that the animal tooth were the ancestors of mammals. By the end of the Permian period, a group of more mobile animal-like reptiles arose. These were the Gargonops. In the early reptile, legs were located on the sides of the body, like many modern lizards. Therefore, such reptiles move idly when walking. The bodies of lizard-like animals bent from side to side, but in the reptiles of Gorgonodlev, the legs grew under the body. This allowed predators to take longer steps and therefore run faster. Many gorgonotuli were armed with huge fangs. Synapsids grew fangs, wool and sweat glands, and also learned to hold constant body temperature. The most primitive of them, Pelycosaurus, evolved into many different species and became the largest and most common reptiles of that era. Most Pelycosaurs had large teeth, and we can conclude that these predators hunted big game. Some species have switched to plant food. The stomachs of herbivores digest much more slowly. Pelycosaurs had to contain a lot of food, and for a long time means these animals' hold have increased in size. However, very soon, carnivorous reptiles Gachiosaurs became larger. The size of Cassinosaurs was up to 6 meters. The mass reached 2 tons. Most families of Cassinosaurs were herbivores, but there was one insectivorous family. Cassinosaurs are the largest land animal sperm. However, the large size did not save the creatures from rapid extinction in the second half of the Permian period. All families of Cassinosaurs were destroyed. Gorgonopses, the family of opsiid monitor lizards, grew noticeably in the Permian period. But no other changes occurred with these animals. At the beginning of the Permian period, Porcinodonts experienced the dawn of their evolution. These were the largest and advanced predators of their time. The largest of these animals could reach a length of 4-5 meters to Othersa. More advanced detachment belonging to the class of synapsids were thyroxides. The thyroxide of the limb is not stuck out to the sides as they Bodcosaurs and modern crocodiles, and were located almost vertically along the body, allowed thyroxides to run, although not very fast, but to bend the spine. For this class of animals did not yet know how to accelerate running. Therapsids do not have scales or wool. Many had tactile hairs growing on their muzzles. Much like Amystachicats and predatory fangs, the first group separated from general line of the thoraxid detachment belonged. These were predators up to 6 meters in size. Largest of this species was Ivanthyosaurus, named after the traveler and paleontologist. Next large under the thyroxide order were Dinocephals. These animals were distinguished by a very large skull with very thick bones. These were herbivorous hippo-like creatures up to 5 meters in length and up to 2 tons in weight. Animals of this class did not eat grass, but gnawed the lower branches of tree ferns or chewed on half-rotted trunks. A new species, animals called Titanosuchus and the family of Dinocephals, was already less picky in food. Like wild boars, these creatures have moved from a purely vegetarian diet to a more versatile diet. For the occasion, Titanosuchus used and possibly hunted small defenseless prey. Another not-so-prosperous family of the Suborder. They were large predators, type of bears up to 6 meters in length with a tail, but relatively slender, not more than 600 kilograms. The next representative of the order of therapsids was the suborder of Anomodonts. This were small creatures from 20 centimeters to a little more than 1 meter, herbivorous and insectivores. Some of the representatives of this suborder lived in burrows. Part of the Anomodonts had 2 large fangs on the upper jaw, which were used to dig out edible roots from the ground. 2 other detachments of synapsids were Thyreodonts. These animals had a normal set of teeth like incisors in mammals. Fangs and molars. Gorgonotuli were the first creatures capable of running fast for short distances. At the end of the Permian period, Gorgonobs dominated all EC. Logical niches of large land predators. Small Gorgonotuli, outwardly similar to modern wild dogs because of the ecological niche was the same. The largest of all Gorgonops was considered to be another suborder of Thyrodont Pterocephals. In contrast to Gorgonotcephalums of Pterocephals were widely spaced, which did not allow them to run fast. Some Pterocephals, for example, Wypergia, had poisonous teeth like those of modern snakes in late Perm. Other species are oceanimal like reptiles. Medicynodonts. One of these species was not larger than a rat. Others were not inferior in size to a cow. Mainly Dicynodonts lived on land. However, some switched to an aquatic lifestyle towards the end during the Permian period. Some groups of reptiles became warm-blooded, which meant that they could survive longer. activity. They did not need to warm up for a long time in the morning after a cold night. Cynodonts were considered the last and most advanced under the order of Phyreodonts. They were the direct ancestors of mammals. The jaws of these animals became stronger and stronger, which allowed to prey larger. Scientists believe that in order to maintain the necessary body temperatures, these animals were very similar to mammals. There is even an opinion that echidna platypuses are actually the same cynodonts that have survived to this day. The end of the Permian period was marked by continents collided with grandiose cataclysms, new mountain ranges, the sea either advanced on land, or the climate receded again, often and sharply changing. Millions of animals and plants could not adapt to all this change and disappeared from the face of the earth during this greatest in the history of the planet extinction. Killed more than half of all animal families were particularly affected. Species that lived in shallow water completely died out. Over 90% of terrestrial and 70% of marine animals. Ancient corals also disappeared. They were replaced by modern reefs forming corals, and finally there was a final extinction before the onset. With the onset of the Triassic, Pangaea began to gradually split into Gondwana, and Laurasia began to form. The Atlantic Ocean climate warming causes many inland seas to dry up. As a result of the Permian extinction had a very negative impact on the animal and plant world of our planet. But during the first 10 million years, life gradually recovered and flourished. Temperature change at different points of the earth during the shaking period began to have a noticeable effect on the plant and animals of certain groups of reptiles adapted to the cold season. Mammals arose from these groups in the Triassic, and a little later, in birds. The drop in temperature most of all occurred in northern latitudes. In other places, the climate remained warm. So not numerous reptiles that survived felt good thanks to hot climate. Very quickly developed vegetation played a large role in creating a favorable climate. Was played by marine invertebrate, reef-building animals, and ammonitesfi. Formation of reefs up to 1,000 meters thick begins. This phenomenon favors the formation of the ecological system. Bivalve mollusks, algae, marine urchins, starfish, sponges lived between corals and formed coarse-grained or fine-grained sand that filled all the voids of corals. Some cephalopods mollusks living in the seas reached gigantic sizes. The diameter of the shell, some of them reached 5 meters. Today, gigantic cephalopods, such as squid, reaching 18 meters in length, but in the Mesozoic era of gigantic forms was much larger. This inspired the ideas of the first cephalopod mollusks throughout the Paleozoic era. Nautiloids were the most common marine predators. Then new, more highly developed cephalopods appeared, including gammonites. Numerous ammonites practically disappeared during the Permian extinction. The middle of the Triassic period, the population of these creatures again spread throughout all over the earth and the seas. New mollusks appeared, such as oysters. Oysters burrowed into the bottoms and passed water through their shells and filtered out food particles from them. A lot of new gastropod mollusks appeared. These are snails. Their relatives, new varieties of coral, shrimp, and lobster began to appear. Ancestors of sea urchins and starfish, apiculcarious sponges, bryozoans, leaf-footed crayfish, and ostriches lived in fresh. Ancient sharks swam in the reservoirs, and in the seas there was a huge number of different muscassids appear. First, primitive bony fish, sharks, and bony fish constantly created conflicts among themselves because of prey. Each species tried to dominate before another. Over time, fish and sharks developed jaws capable of chewing crab shells and shells of mollusks like mussels. Increased diversity of ray-fin fish among the ray-fin predators appeared like the modern pike. The largest Triassic ray-fin fish reached 1 meter in length. For example, so rich this among other foodus by pterosaurs. Primitive jawless canodonts living in the Cambrian period in the Triassic finally dying out appeared. Insects, titanopters, they were huge grasshoppers up to 36 centimeters long, are the largest predators of the shaking seas. There were aquatic reptiles, nodosaurs similar to lizards, caught this with the help of their sharp teeth. Well-known ichthyosaurs could catch Eupany prey due to its outstanding speed quality. The largest platans, similar to tritons, crawled along the seabed, looking for shells, and then crushed the prey with powerful flat teeth. Most famous Proterosaurus Tanystropheus had a long and thin neck which was twice the length of the body. It was a land animal and probably used its graceful neck as a fishing rod. Stood on the water's edge. Tanystropheus could reach fish swimming underwater at a fair distance from the shore. At the beginning of the Triassic period, the animal world was the same throughout the earth. Various types of sushi could freely spread throughout Pangaea because there were no large water barriers arose. Huge herds of herbivorous leaf soars made small travel and rested these animals near lakes and rivers. Scientists find in different countries the fossil remains of these animals. This is China, India, South Africa, and even Antarctica in the early Triassic. The first frogs got their food side by side with them. Later, the ancestors of frogs were joined by the first land and aquatic turtles, as well as crocodiles. Very soon aquatic turtles and crocodiles invaded the warm seas. These creatures quickly multiplied and spread throughout the oceans in the Triassic period. The dominant class became vertebrates, and quadrupeds stood out strongly from this class then, and a new group was born called reptilomorphs of non-metals. The circle was laid eggs from reptilomorphs. A group of archosauromorphs bred, and from this group most numerous subgroup appeared called archosaurs. Archosaurs means ruling reptiles. The first archosaurs were small animals who hunted for small game along the shores of the lake and rivers. Subsequently, from these animals began to develop large representatives of the fauna. The largest group, Triassic archosaurs, were called in contrast to the first dinosaurs. They were stocky, powerful, and relatively clumsy creatures. In this family belonged to the class of archosaurs from the order Ptychodonts. Scientists gave these creatures the name Phytosaurs. Phytosaurs led a semi-aquatic lifestyle, almost like modern crocodiles. The pseudopalatine family stands out here, including the largest almost terrestrial animals of the Triassic, up to 12 meters. The third large detachment of Cruratarsi, and these were saurs. These animals were herbivorous and had bone plates on the skin and horns. The typical length of Etosaurus was from 3 to 5 meters. Also in the Triassic period, a detachment of prosauropods appeared. These were direct descendants of all dinosaurs, and unlike true sauropods, prosauropods retained the stability to stand up on their hind legs and explain foliage from the top of a particularly tall tree. The largest family of Triassic prosauropods were boards reaching from 7 to 10 meters in length and weighed almost a ton. Next large family of Triassic prosauropods were approximately the same dimensions as the boards, but a detachment of real sauropods in the Triassic. Another large group of Triassic animals is just beginning to form. They are pteropods. They are the only group of carnivorous dinosaurs that all other dinosaurs have. Were herbivorous. Another family of theropods arose in the Triassic period. These were Hirarosaurus that reached from 2 to 6 meters in length and weighed from 30 to 350 kilograms in the Triassic period. Two genus Ornithischian dinosaurs are small and agile herbivorous creatures, reached up to 1 meter in length and 10 kilograms in weight at the end of the Triassic period. In evolution of life on Earth, two important events occurred. One of the events happened on land and was marked by the appearance of the first mammals. The second event occurred in the air and was associated with the advent of Pterosaurus hangisaurus. It was a small lizard who lived in the Permian period, who tried to rise into the air. Hangered Tysaur did not have real wings, but this creature was planned tree by tree. How modern flying squirrels. Pterosaurs were a special branchiarchosaurs, separated in the Triassic from the general line. These small archosaurs acquired leathery wings and learned to fly. The first pterosaurs ate insects. A special representative of the Triassic archosaurs, Protoaves, the ancestor of all birds. However, Not all paleontologists agree that he is the ancestor of Alberts and other group of archosaurs. Reptiles, herbivorous rhynchosaurs, jaws and teeth of our rhynchosaurs were perfectly adapted for cutting and chopping hard plants. Appeared Eoparchorids, which were similar to small dinosaurs but were not relatives. They were very agile creatures. Eoparchorids could run across water bodies on the surface like modern lizards. Basilisks, Lipidae, remorphs are creatures from which modern snakes and lizards originated. Among the ancestors of Reptiles, a particularly large group of Zaurodorigia stood out. These were creatures that had passed to aquatic lifestyle like modern tools. The most popular species is known as Notus aeronauthor. Interesting group of sauriodonts tried to occupy an ecological niche. Turtles, but nothing to do with turtles. These representatives some had only separate bone plates. Almost imperceptibly, Triassic period was marked by the appearance of plesiosaurs. But so far the sea inhabitants were small in size, no more than 2 meters. Among the Zaurodorigia, Pistosaurus stood out in particular. The length of the Pistosaurus was about 3 meters and the weight was up to 450 kilograms. The Pistosaurus had a very long neck and was very stiff. The ridge of the limbs were represented by fins in the form of oars. Pistosaurus exclusively on fish, possessing teeth ideal for catching. In the Triassic period, the first beak-headed lizards appeared. Close to different species of ichthyosaurs thrived in the water of modern Gytheria. Tetrapods, like modern dolphins and whales, have finally switched to an aquatic lifestyle. Ichthyosaurs eventually acquired a hydrodynamic shape and became viviparous. Huge round eyes in ichthyosaurs are explained by the fact that these animals did not use echolocation as whales or dolphins. Ichthyosaurs completely relied on their eyesight, and we can say that the eyes of predators made a huge evolution and transformation of the paws in early ichthyosaurs turned into fins. This became a huge advantage when looking for prey in the vast ocean. Ichthyosaurs became increase in size and divide into numerous species. The largest among the families of ichthyosaurs, the Shastasaurus, is considered the largest individual of the Shastasaurus. Reached a length of 23 meters and fun up to 40 tons. Shastasaurus became the champion in sizes among the Triassic and previous periods. In the Triassic period, the first real turtles. The shell of the turtles was not yet formed, and these reptiles are not cold. Hide their heads and paws in case of danger. The Triassic period was filleted a wide variety of lizards. At the very beginning of the Mesozoic, a large-scale extinction still continued. At the group of synopsid reptilomorphs, the largest group is the Priceodonts, or dog of the teeth, remained at the top of the food chain. Cynodonts were swift-footed carnivorous reptiles attacking herds of sluggish herbivores. In late Triassic, cynodonts gave rise to true mammals such as ancestors, modern mice, and shrews. In addition to the listed representatives of synapsids, there were also smaller cephals survived the Permian Triassic extinction. To the smallest group animals in the shake can be attributed to this group. All amphibians belong to pterosaurs, were large crocodile-like creatures from 2 to 6 meters in length. Small creatures such as tremodosaurs among the new ones also appeared. Metaposaurus and Chigatosaurs reaching up to 3 meters in length in the Triassic. The first frog triad appeared at Batrachus. Unlike modern frogs, this 10-centimeter animal had a small tail, more like a process of about 225 million years ago. A group of reptiles arose which were called tachyodonts. Cacodonts led aquatic lifestyle and swam with the help of a powerful tail, while raking in the rear legs that were much larger than the front. When earlier tachyodonts emerged from water on land, strong hind legs of these animals quickly adapted to walking on solid ground. A little later, eugodonts began to not only walk fast, but also run fast when walking. These animals used 4 legs, but when reptiles could only use air hind legs for the next 20 million years. Ars decadents evolved into the first dinosaurs on Earth, stegocephals. They were sedentary animals with a small body, small limbs, and a large head when hunting. Stegocephalians used an ambush predators waited until the prey wasp passed by and suddenly attacked the victim. Mastodosaurus skulls of these animals reached 1 meter in length. The massive dinosaurs in appearance resembled huge frogs. These giant frogs preyed on fish and therefore rarely left the water Wednesday. The swamp became smaller, and the massive dinosaurs were forced to populate everything deeper places, often crowding in large numbers. That's why no find many skeletons of these animals in small reefs in the Triassic. A lot of groups of a wide variety of animals appear, but at the end period, all of the above species of animals die out. Empty niches of extinct animals filled with new creatures, dinosaurs, and other reptiles have become the dominant group of land animals. Among dinosaurs appear pteropods and prosauropods. Theropods moved on well-developed hind limbs, had heavy-tailed, powerful jaws, small and weak forelimbs in size. These animals were from a few centimeters to 15 meters. Thermopods were absolute predators. About sauropods ate, as a rule, plants. Some of them were omnivores. Herbivores walked on 4 legs. Long neck and tail plesiosaurs lived in the sea, but sometimes came ashore. Predators reached 15 meters in length and ate fish as well. Something else worth mentioning is Chirotherium or Charaterium is not alive creature. Scientists call the fossil shaking track by coincidence. These tracks look like traces of Chirotherium were surprisingly similar to the hands of monkeys, of people, and bears. First discovered in German Triassics in stones in 1834 and later in England in 1838. The same footprints were found before dinosaurs were known. Theory of what animal these footprints belong to is completely diverse, but so far there is a consensus. No one came to the sea. There are many reptiles that are undoubtedly descended from mainland ancestors, quickly evolved turtles, wide-boned shelled dolphin-like ichthyosaurs, and gigantic plesiosaurs with small head on a long neck. The ichthyosaur had a row of uniform teeth. A turtle's teeth disappear. 5-fingered limbs of ichthyosaurs turn into fins, well adapted for swimming since the shaking period. Reptiles that have moved to live in the sea gradually populate more and more extensive ocean spaces. Secret Mesozoic era. Jurassic period, 199 million years ago. In Triassic period begins. Jurassic period, the active disintegration of the supercontinent Pangaea continues. After a massive extinction, nature began to gradually recover, but after the splitting continent, animals could no longer move freely around the planet. When Pangaea began to split, new seas and straits arose in which then sheltered new types of animals, and algae lilies became widespread. In the Jurassic period, sea lilies formed giant coral reefs, shell airing numerous ammonites. The ancestors of octopuses and squids called belemnites appeared in the Jurassic seas. Many different types of fish are shark rays, as well as bony cartilaginous and ganoid Pisces. Rayfin Pisces occupied a dominant niche in the Jurassic period. The largest rayfin fish of that time, Isia creature, reached 16 meters in length and fed on plankton. As modern whales and whale sharks, cartilaginous fish continue to decline, apparently due to the fact that ichthyosaurs from Avidoregium successfully compete with sharks during this period. One of the oldest shark-like helicoprion dies out, which has been known since the Carboniferous period. In the Jurassic period, the Amish became less than in Triassic. Belemnites were close relatives of modern cuttlefish and squid. These marine inhabitants had the internal skeleton of a cigar-shaped belemnite, similar to a modern octopus, and squids produced an inky liquid and used it to create a smoke screen when they tried to escape from predators in the seas of the Jurassic period. Have also received significant development. Bivalve mollusks, especially belonging to the oyster family. Among gastropod mollusks of the Jurassic period, there are 2 genera that have survived unchanged to this day. These are pond snails and coil sea urchins. Gradually evolved from an oblong shape to round on land and lakes and rivers. Live many different types of crocodiles widely settled around the globe. Put its origin in saltwater crocodiles with long snouts and sharp teeth for catching fish. Some variety crocodiles even grew flippers instead of legs to make it easier to swim. Tail fins allowed crocodiles to develop greater speed in water than new genera of fossil turtles appear on land and modern turtles appear already at the end of the Jurassic period. A huge number of species of plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs appeared which seriously competed with the new fast-moving sharks. An extremely mobile fish, a large number of amphibians lived in freshwater reservoirs. This is almost modern salamanders, frogs, and worms appear. A lot of crustaceans, this barnacle, decapods, and freshwater spongus. As you know, the first ichthyosaurs appeared in the Triassic period. In the Jurassic period, these reptiles perfectly adapted to life. Although ichthyosaurs belong to reptiles, based on their fossil remains, it can be assumed that these animals were viviparous and produced ready-made offspring as a mammal. Perhaps cubs of ichthyosaurs were born in the open sea. Like whales, Blossaurus were also a large group of predators that lived in the Jurassic seas. Plesiosaurs had a thick body with flower-leaf-shaped limbs and a long serpentine neck with a small head. Marine predators hunted for shoals of small fish with the help of their flexible sciaces. Another group, short-necked carnivores in the depths. Some large dinosaurs also hunted. Jurassic seas were relatively shallow, so animal remains are well preserved in such places. Carried by sea currents or waves, large vegetation of the Jurassic period contributed to the widespread distribution of reptiles. Most first dinosaurs appeared over 200 million years ago, and 140 million years off their existence. These popular creatures have evolved into many dinosaurs of all kinds spread across all continents and adapted to life in a wide variety of habitats. Some dinosaurs were not larger than squirrels, and others weighed more than 15. Adult elephants combined alone waddled heavily on 4 legs. Others ran on 2 legs faster than Olympic champions in the sprint thanks to dinosaurs. Such as science appeared as paleontology, so most of the dinosaurs of the Jurassic period belonged to the order of Saurischia, but there was also a detachment of bird pelvic dinosaurs, or an ornithischia detachment. Detachments were divided into suborders, among which stood out the most famous sauropodomorphs. Underorders, in turn, were divided into infraorders, the most popular infra. There is sauropods. Sauropods moved on 4 legs and had on the feet of 5 fingers. The main food was vegetable. Sauropods had a long neck, small head, and long tail. At the moment, between connoisseurs of paleontology, a serious debate over whether dinosaurs could have 2 brains alone. Acclaimed that creatures like the Stegosaurus had a second brain, while others fiercely refute this theory. Sauropods with long necks roamed the Jurassic savannas and ate all the vegetation that they could reach. After passing through the herd sauropods, a dense forest turned into a lifeless desert. Sauropods led a herd life, and in some species, the adults cared for children and adolescents. In other sauropod species, the children grew up separately from parents, and already grown individuals joined the herds. In a series of films about the Park Jurassic period show what kind of Eurobot chews leaves and branches. In fact, sauropods bit off and immediately swallowed vegetation. Food fell into the stomach and was already there, rubbed with the help of stones that animals swallowed in advance. And this is the most numerous family of Jurassic sauropods, Diplodocus, and there are numerous varieties. The largest sauropod is considered to be Amphicoelius. The mass of this animal reached up to 150 tons and a length of up to 50 meters. Most individuals of the Diplodocus family did not exceed 25 meters, and weight was no more than 40 tons. The Diplodocus family included sucanimals like Supersaurus, Apatosaurus, and of course Diplodocus. Diplodocus appeared before many. Sauropod is the oldest dinosaur in length. This herbivore reached up to 28 meters. Supersaurus from the same family spent most of his life in swamps and lakes where they passed and escaped from predators. Sauria from the family of Diplodocus. Another family occurred under called Diplodocus. They were small animals compared to Diplodocus, no more than 10 meters in length and no more than 4 tons. This family of Macronaria is the most diverse family after Diplodocus differences in these sauropods by sauropods. Diplodocus was a little. These animals made louder sounds. Diplodocus, due to large leather bags located under the nose, is the most popular species among the macronari, were brachiosaurs. Brachiosaurs could get leaves from or tall trees. Diplodocus could not do this, despite the fact that Everionecronaria were small. Brachiosaurus was a true giant. The length of an average animal was up to 27 m and weighed up to 50 tons daily. The Brachiosaurus needed food in the amount of 500 kilograms of green mass. The smallest Jurassic period were Consideranchosaurs, up to 4 meters in length and only up to 30 kilograms in weight. In Mamenchisaurus, with a total body of 25 meters. The length of the herbivore's neck was 15 meters in the Jurassic. Primitive sauropods also existed. There were volcanodonts, ancestors of Diplodocus and Macronaria. In these dinosaurs, the bones are not were hollow like in advanced sauropods and were almost solid. Neck animals was short and the body was not adapted for the total eating of vegetation. Volcanodonts could eat grass and eat trees, but in much smaller quantities than the descendants of the weight of these animals could reach up to 48 tons and length up to 18 meters. Another ancestor of sauropod, Shunnosaurus, which lived at the beginning of the Jurassic period. This animal was different from other representatives of the prosauropods by the fact that it had a mace on its tail. With this weapon, the Shunnosaurus defended itself from enemies in the middle Jurassic period, could not stand the competition with evolution, and quietly died out. Well, of course, flourished in the Jurassic period. Suborder of theropods. Theropods were all carnivorous dinosaurs on our planet. Predators moved on two legs that practically did not differ from those of birds. Many theropods incubated eggs. Some theropod birds had feathers. For a long time it was believed that birds descended from theropod. Now most paleontologists agree that birds separated from the main line of archosaurs as early as the Triassic. And the resemblance of theropodous toe birds just jokes. Parallel evolution. Forelimbs. Theropod outwardly similar to human, but structure of the bones and muscles of theropods is completely different. Their hands were much smaller, mobile, than our theropods could not rotate the brush by turning it with the palm of their hand up or down, and some predatorso. What theropods lived in the Earth period. A detachment called coelophysoids. These agile predatory creatures reached up to 1.5 meters in length and weighed up to 300 kilograms. Small coelophysoids were not real predators. They fed on insects and carrion. Larger species hunted sauropods and prosauropods when the sea animals were small in stature. The largest coelophysoid was considered to be Dilophosaurus. And here there are loud disputes among paleontologists about how the Dilophosaurus looked like. Whether this animal had a hood and whether it spit poison is a big question. Another line of theropods was represented by Ceratosaurs. Scientists very often enrolled new and unknown species of dinosaurs to Ceratosaurus, and therefore this suborder became very numerous in it. There were animals from 1 meter to 12 meters, and weight cold range from a few kilograms to 1 ton. Some ceratosaurs switched to vegetable way of life. Then theropods were divided into perfect and imperfect predators. The next family of Jurassic theropods were megalosaurids, or huge lizards. Megalosaurids are large predators up to 12 meters in length and up to 5 tons in weight. Animals hunted young specimens of large sauropods and also ate the body soft old individuals who died by their own death. The largest predator from this family was a Brachiosaurus. Brachiosaurus had huge sharp teeth similar to the teeth of a saw. With the help of such teeth, predators tore the flesh of their victims. Megalosaurids populated all areas of the globe. Ethologists have found remains in North America and in Europe and Africa in the Vriat, the beginning of their evolution. Individuals of this family were fragile and small. But later megalosaurids were true monstrosities, helped in the hunt for large herbivorous dinosaurs. Sharp claws undoubtedly left terrible lacerations in Baku. Capture at the powerful neck of the predator allowed him to stab dagger-shaped fangs. Another order of theropods that deserves attention. These are carnosaurs. Size of the Jurassic Carnosaurus was up to 12 meters, and the weight was up to 5 tons. Most famous of the Carnosaurs was the Allosaurus. Despite the large size of the Allosaurus, were very mobile over a short distance. Predators developed speeds up to 55 km/h, and strong and dexterous hands. Allosaurus allowed them to confidently grab small, nimble prey. Many paleontologists believe that allosaurs gathered in flocks and attacked herds for emphasis on choosing relatively small individuals. There is also a theory that adult allosaurs took care of, and the offspring, in particular, gave the children part of the mind meat. By the way, the Allosaurus was not the largest carnivore. The largest Carnosaurus was a pant. What made this animal bigger than an Allosaurus surely could use his jaw. Other pteropods belonged to Coelurosaurs. Many of the predators had feathers similar to the feathers of modern birds. For a long time, birds were considered descendants of the whole rhesaur in general. The ancestor of all Coelurosaurs, considered to be Proceratosaurus under the order Coelurosaurs, consists of 3 infraorder attachments. Are 4-meter dinosaurs. Coelurid second infraorder represents campsognathid, small pteropods up to 3 kilograms in weight. Diet of these small predators consisted of rodents and insects, and the third infraorder consisted of tyrannosaurids. Jurassic tyrannosaurids were ancestors. Famous Tyrannosaurus predators were no more than 4 meters in length and had primitive downy plumage. Well, that's how further theropods are collectively called maniraptors. Originally believed to be the direct ancestors of birds, but it turned out that maniraptors have nothing to do with birds. Like this looks like one of the under-detachment of maniraptors. Such creatures at first were no more at 1 meters in length, and then these small predators began to decrease altogether and mainly led an arboreal lifestyle. Famous Stegosaurus, sedentary armored herbivorous dinosaur. This animal belonged to the suborder Phyreophores. The sizes of Stegosaurus ranged from 4 to 12 meters, weight from 150 kilograms up to 5 tons. Huge ridges on the back and dangerous spikes on the tail were an essential weapon against predators. Stegosaurs grazed in herds of adults. Individuals took care of children. Also, a second infraorder is ankylosaurs. These animals relied on a more powerful passive body. Of Ankylosaurus was covered with bone plates. In the Jurassic period, ankylosaurs were just forming. The shells of Jurassic herbivores were not yet very durable in length. The Jurassic ankylosaurs reached 4 meters, and this is a suborder of birds of pelvic dinosaurs, sauropods. The main infraorder of sauropods, ornithopods, represented. These herbivorous dinosaurs lived in forests and did not defend themselves from predators, but simply ran away from them. In the Jurassic, ornithopods reached up to 8 meters and weighed up to 700 kilograms at the end of the Earth period. From ornithopods, marginal cephalans separated, which began to grow horns on their heads under the order of Ornithoschistanosaurs. The Heterodontosaurus family is the only dinosaurs that had incisors, fangs, and molars. Almost like mammal, Heterodontosaurs occupied the ecological niche of modern pigs in the Jurassic period. Animals dug out of the ground. These, with forelimbs, teeth, cones, and nuts, did not disdain insects, and on occasion caught and ate small animals. Also in the Jurassic period, there were separate types of ornithischian dinosaurs which were not included in any of the large groups. Many small predators with beak-shaped jaws appear. Scaly lepidosaurs today in modern Africa live. Gregarious animals such as gazelles, buffaloes, and zebras. Huge herds of many thousands migrate from one part of Africa to another. In the Jurassic period, something like thousands of hadrosaurs huddled together in a herd traveled through the ancient lands of our planet's. Hadrosaurs plucked undersized vegetation with strong molars after the Triassic-Jurassic extinction. The only one over the detachment survived. They were morphed crocodiles. These animals are 1.5 meters long. Other representatives of the crocodile morphs were Stylus protosuchuan. Length reached 1 meter, and the weight was no more than 40 kilograms. Over time, group evolved and split into several new groups. More advanced group was represented by Ptolodazui. These were saltwater crocodiles whose paws turned into talatazuhi fins divided approximately in half into two families, Metrorachida and Telesaurs. Meterhinkid reached a length of 6 meters and lived in the open sea. Marine predators acquired a tail fin and learned to drink sea water like the sea turtles of the metro. The ringheads came ashore only till Lataleosaurus eggs could grow up to 9 meters and lived off the coast. The behavior of these creatures practically did not differ from modern crocodiles. The ancestors of modern crocodiles streaked up to 4 meters in length and looked almost like modern crocodiles and small rat-like land in the Jurassic period. The evolution of insects sharply accelerated ancient nature, filled with an endless buzzing and crackling that issued many new types of insects crawling and flying around. Among them were the ancestors of modern ants, bees, earwigs, flies, and wasps, various dragonflies, beetles, cicadas, bugs, and spiders. Later in the Cretaceous era was a new evolutionary explosion when insects began to establish contact so much that the flowering plants that appeared in the Jurassic period, Erthausen's of Pt. Rosaurs rose. These were the first and largest flying vertebrates related torcosaurs. The takeoff of the evolution of these animals came from the Anarchan period. The most famous pterosaurs of the early Mesozoic were Pterodactylus and Rhamphorhynchus. Rhamphorhynchus had long tails, long narrow wings, and a large skull, with numerous Rhamphorhynchus teeth, could take off from the ground. The masters of the sky settled on the banks of rivers, lakes, and seas. The wingspan of Rhamphorhynchus could reach 2.5 meters, could fly and feed on their own immediately after hatching from an egg among Rhamphorhynchus. The Neuromythid family stands out. These were small insectivorous Rhamphorhynchus, the size of sparrow, in the middle of the Jurassic period. These pterodactyls originated from an arachnophytes. Pterosaurs had wings of a more efficient design and did not need a tail to maneuver in the air. Long pterodactyls did not differ in size and lifestyle from Rhamphorhynchus. Many pterodactyls had on their heads long. To improve aerodynamics, flying creatures ate fish, sometimes discounts lilies, mollusks, insects. In order to take off, pterodactyls are forced weird jumping off rocks or trees in the Jurassic period. And the first birds, ancestors of the first birds, were the ancient reptile pseudosects that lived in the Triassic period, and also gave rise to dinosaurs and crocodile. 3. A genus of Jurassic bird-like creatures. Archaeopteryx is more of a maniraptor than a bird, and Longioteryx is almost certainly a bird, something like a modern kingfisher. But birds in the Jurassic period were still very rare. Another genus of animals that began to flourish in the Jurassic period, lipid-zabromorphs, ancestors of lizards and snakes. Most of the Jurassic lipids of oromorphs belong to Saurus. Pterygiathys are marine reptiles leading a lifestyle like modern seals. Largest suborder of the Jurassic Raptorigium is the plesiosaurs. They are large and very large predators with a short neck, an elongated head, and a large mouth. Plesiosaurs can reach a length of up to 20 meters. An interesting feature was in plesiosaurs. This is a special design of the nostrils that served not for breathing, viewed exclusively for sniffing water. Plesiosaurs differed from plesiosaurs with a small head on a long neck. Plesiosaurs were also predators, but fed on smaller prey. Jurassic plesiosaurs ranged from 5 to 8 meters. Lizards in the Jurassic period were few more than half of the beak of the head of lizard of the modern type. Some of lizards lived in freshwater reservoirs. Synapsids of the Jurassic period consisted of primitive animals. Of modern platypuses and echidnas are the only known exception. Recently discovered otter-like beavertail. This beast reached 42 centimeters long. Fruitophosor is also interesting. The first in the history of the Earth anteater incisor predators have appeared among mammals since the chipmunk. Some of these animals have adapted to life on trees at the same time. About 160 million years ago, The first placental mammals, such as the progenitor of all Placentagora Myocene Mesozoic era Cretaceous period to Mesozoic era, came to an end with the last and most eventful prehistoric inhabitants of the Cretaceous period. During the Cretaceous period, on our planet continued the great split of the continents. The climate was no longer so hot and suitable for Jurassic animals in the northern territories of our planet had a real winter with snow, but still the temperature of the Cretaceous period was higher than today in the Cretaceous period. Life reached perhaps the highest. The greatest variety of such a wide variety of life on Earth was not never before, not after. During this wonderful period, there were no large-scale catastrophes. Evolution proceeded slowly, and calmly. Flowering plants appeared that reduced soil erosion. As a result of these events, in the ocean began to receive less minerals. All this led to a decrease in the variety of biomass. The depths of the ocean are not as rich and fabulous as before, but due to flowering plants, the mass of terrestrial vegetation has greatly increased. Growth number of flowering plants contributed to the growth in the number of insects feeding on nectar and carrying pollen, as well as animals that eat fruits, and spread. Workshop appeared. Insects that do not cold live without flowering plants. These butterflies and bees, birds and mammals ate fruits and carried seeds over long distances, spreading plants to new parts of the continents. The population of small animals increased. Flowering vegetation formed large dense thickets in which small rodents, lizards, and snakes hide. In the Cretaceous period, many orders of bivalves of the type mussels and gastropods, such as ammonite snails. There is less space for these creatures occupied by belemnites. New inhabitants appeared: small shrimps, crabs, and lobsters. The first mammulites appeared. This is a type of coral that formed reefs. Giant clams spread very quickly in the oceans of the cute Periodots and Ceramus, which can reach up to 3 meters. The most prosperous class of fish in the Cretaceous period were, as they are now, raven fish. Largest of the raven class were fish such as the Protosphaerina, which reached 3 meters in length, and Zoophactine up to 6 meters in size. The first characinids appeared in the Cretaceous period: salmon and pike. Modern pike arose. It was then that did not change at all those times. The Cretaceous sharks gradually began to look like modern sharks and reached a length of 7 meters and raised one mesom species of Jurassic. Plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs were still found in the ceased. Descendants of ichthyosaurs that died out at the beginning of the Cretaceous period reached 20 meters in length and had 2 pairs of short flippers. The hosts past ray were considered ferocious marine plesiosaurs of the Cretaceous period, like elasmosaurs and also giant mosasaurs. Prey. These predators consisted of all types of fish inhabiting the ocean. The giants were not very picky eaters in those days in the oceans. Giant sea turtles, Archaeolones, did not swim hastily, raking warm water with flippers in search of food. The length of the Archelons reached almost 4 meters. The largest known Archelon specimen found scientists was 480 centimeters long, and the distance between the fins reached 530 centimeters. The weight of this turtle during life reached 4 tons. Meanwhile, on Lund also, there were many interesting events from the lizard from different ancestors. Divorced real snakes on the territory of modern Europe lived. Large lizards with long spikes on their backs in the jungle appeared, and some new species of seabirds, Hesperornis, were similar to large loons flying everywhere. Bees fluttered, moths and other insects among the foliage, and numerous spiders hid, stalking their prey. New groups plants very quickly formed. Huge forests for land animals has become a real paradise. A variety of leaves and other edible vegetation made it possible for new animals to appear. The fox was filled with more and more. Retinosaurs were still the dominant animal group in the Cretaceous. 49% of all genera of Cretaceous animals. Dinosaurs continued to flourish. Evolved new species arose throughout the Cretaceous period, having reached the peak of its prosperity as one of the largest units. Dinosaurs were pangolin dinosaurs. Most theropods were carnivores. Bipedal theropod dinosaurs are becoming more diverse. This is due to the fact that becoming more and more diverse insects and mammals. Mosteratosaurs were the most primitive of all theropods that survived into the Cretaceous. Distinguishing abilities of Ceratosaurus from other theropods are bone plaques on crocodile-like skin. Ceratosaurs include two large families. The first family is the abundance of saurids. These were large predators up to 9 meters in length and weighing up to 1.5 tons after the split. There were many islands that slowly traveled across the ocean, gradually forming future continents. Africa, Australia, Eurasia, North and South America. Obelisivirids lived only in the southern hemisphere of the Earth. The main prey of predators were young sauropods and small mammals. Also, any of the predators carnally fed on the carrion of the hand. Most obelisivirids were very short and with 4 fingers. Ambulosaurids. The subfamily of carnivores is distinguished. This subfamily includes 7 genera that descended from one ancestor. An interesting representative of obelisaurid called Magongosaurus. This unusual predator had a lesson on the forehead and unusual 4 bulldog dinosaur jaws that are convenient to strangle large and strong prey. These dinosaurs were distinguished by their ferocious disposition. They fought a lot among themselves and with gladly ate defeated opponents. This is the only type of dinosaur of which regular cannibalism is reliably proven. The Carnotaurus also had a shortened muzzle, but his jaws were weak, but his mouth was wide open. Very large pieces of food without chewing. Carnotaurus vision. Another predator, Rajasaurus almost did not differ from Megasaurus, except that it weighed up to 4 tons. That's a lot more than the weight of any other obelissaurus. The second family of cute Ceratosaurs. Wellosaurids. These animals were similar to Ceratosaurs, but were much smaller. In abundance of Zavarid, only up to 2.5 meters in length and weighing up to 50 kg. The exception to this family was Deltadrameus. Deltatromeos stood out from the series. Butosaurid, gigantic sizes reaching up to 13 meters in length and up to 3.5 tons of weight. Palmuscle. Deltadrama mustache were incredibly strong to eat. Theory that Deltagromus grabbed and killed large prey not with his teeth. Thus most terrors are with their front paws. Now we will consider the descendants of the Jurassic. Megalosaurus is over the megalosauroid family or Spinosauroid Casey in the fact that the family of megalosaurids died out at the very beginning of the Cretaceous period. The last representative of this family was an Afrovenator predator, reached up to 9 meters in length at the end of the Jurassic period. A new family of Spinosaurids separated from megalosaurids, like modern white bears. These animals ate mainly fish, but any representative of this family could, on occasion, eat a small dinosaur if it gapes, and if a predator fisher did not eat for a long time, it could have caught a rather large animal. The jaws of the back of the saurids were long, thin, and weak, like those of dolphins or beefs. The teeth of predators were numerous but small, many 2 leathery sail-rich blood vessels. The sail was used as a radiator in a car. If the sail was blown by the wind, then there was a cooling of the blood that went through the vessels inside. Was especially useful sail if the animal had to sit for a long time on the shore of the reservoir in the hot sun and cold wind. If the predator overheated, then there was an expansion of blood vessels in the sail. If animal froze, then the vessels in the sail began to shrink. Spinosaurids were very large animals. The body length with the tail varied up to 18 meters, and the weight could reach up to 9 Tesla. This family includes the largest land predators of all time. Let's talk about how Allosaurus. Carnosaurs had good sense of smell, but at the same time did not differ in intelligence. The brain of predators was approximately the same as that of Crocodile. Cretaceous Carnosaurs are divided into 2 families. The first family is the name Carcharodontaurids, are very large animals that reached up to 13.5 meters long and weighed up to 6 tons. Stands out among the Carcharodontaurids a 12-meter Acrocanthosaurus that lived at the beginning of the Cretaceous period in the eastern and the North American continent. The predator did not know how to run fast. but he had a very strong front paws with which he pressed the victim to himself and did not allow him to break out. In a case of long starvation on the back of an Acrocanthosaurus, there was a thick fat compartment running along almost the anterior spine. It is interesting that the fingers on the hands of the Acrocanthosaurus bent in both sides, not only towards the palm, but vice versa in the middle of the Cretaceous. Everything Carcharodontaurs became extinct. The second family of Milcarnosaurs is Cnitonatators. This includes not-so-huge animals up to 9 meters in length and up to 4 tons weight. These were smaller versions. Now it's worth talking about more advanced theropods or the Holrosaurs. These animals ran fast and many of these species had plumage designed not to fly, but in order not to freeze. In large Coelurosaurs living in a warm climate in adulthood, feathers fell out of fuselage. With equal body sizes of the Coelurosaur had twice the brain size of previously considered theropods. The Holrosaurs became closer to the bird than the crocodiles. To him, the most famous subfamily Coelurosaurs are Tyrannosaurids. The sizes of Tyrannosaurids varied up to 14 meters, and weight reached 7 tons. Tyrannosauroids were found only in the northern hemisphere of the Earth on the fragments of the former continent Laurasia as small islands of Cretaceous Europe. Tyrannosauroids quickly became extinct in the south hemisphere. Their ecological niche was occupied by Ceratosaurs and Carnosaurs. Tyrannosaurid family belonged to the largest plateau-eating animals that ever lived on the planet. Tyrannosaurids used forepaws to hold small prey before biting down. Also, probably males clung with small paws to the mating female so as not to fall. Also, the front paws served as a help in order so that the predator can get up from the ground after sleeping. Unlike other types of Tyrannosaurus, could not only gnaw off pieces of meat from the carcass, but also normally butcher the prey. These pteropods could gnaw bones and suck out bone marrow just and get to the tasty and nutritious insides of a large stand. The famous Tyrannosaurid is a Tyrannosaurus in length. Predator reached 14 meters. Skull more than a meter long, had large sharp teeth. Each tooth was about 16 centimeters in size. Adult tyrannosaurs were clumsy, but predators quickly ran and, if necessary, could reach speeds of up to 30 km/h. Usually moved in steps at a speed of about 17 km/h. The step of the Tyrannosaurus was formed. Tyrannosaurs did not like to run because with such a mass, any fall led to severe injuries on the skeletons, and all old Tyrannosaurs have traces of helid fractures. A newborn Tyrannosaurus rex was the size of a newborn ostrich. By 2 years old, Tyrannosaurus reached 30 kilograms. 10-year-old Tyrannosaurus weighed 1,800 kg. Then there was a period of rapid growth, and by the age of 18, the animal became sexually mature with a body weight of about 4 tons. Then growth slowed down greatly, but lasted all his life, which the tyrant of the saurids was not very long. Oldest of the known specimens lived for 28 years and weighed at the end of his life 5.5 tons. Tyrannosaurus rex is probably better known than other dinosaurs. In addition, it is likely that this is one of the last dinosaurs to ever live on Earth. Another member of this family was Tarbosaurus. Thanks to powerful jaws and strong teeth, Tarbosaurs easily gnawed through the thick bone shell of herbivorous Scalosaurus. Next in line of the theropod suborder families are Compsognathids. The small dinosaurs in the Jurassic were no bigger than a rooster, but in the Cretaceous period, they became larger, up to 2.5 meters in length and up to 30 kilograms in weight. The plumage of Compsognathids was soft and fluffy like modern kiwis. Compsognathids ate lizards and mammals. Small long-tailed Pteryx. It was the only dinosaur whose approximate lifetime coloring is like that of a modern raccoon. Had surprisingly long index fingers, longer than the forearm. Another subfamily Callidomymosaurus orneva. They were medium-sized dinosaurs up to 6 meters in length and up to 440 kilograms in weight. The creatures looked like ostriches with big eyes, many horns. Mimosaurus. Among the Mimosaurornithus, the giant Deinocheirus stands out sharply. It was the most longest theropod in the history of the Earth. The animal could reach a length of up to 20 meters along with a tail and weigh up to 9 tons. Ornithomimosaurs ran fast. The maximum speed of theropods was 80 kilometers per hour. Ornithomimosaurs were omnivorous predators, ate small animals, lizards, frogs, fish, eggs of other dinosaurs. Ornithomimosaurus also ate fruits that were picked directly from trees, bending branches with hands. Among the maniraptors, there was the strangest superfamily of theropods. This were those rubber. These dinosaurs were herbivorous. The sizes of theropods could reach up to 12 meters. The weight of the largest specimens reached more than 6 tons, almost like a Tyrannosaurus. Instead of losing teeth, dinosaur was big and dumb. There were so-called termite killers, Alvarez-Sauroma, small dinosaurs that ate only Termitocenother and Ford are worth paying attention to, as the oviraptors. The physique of these animals resembled ostriches. Many animals had coxcomb. Some oviraptors were carnivores, some omnivorous, some herbivores. This group was very diverse. Some animals were the size of a modern smartphone, while others were up to 8 meters long. Some weighed several grams, and others could reach up to 2 tons. Athy ran very fast and could reach speeds of up to 70 km. All the following belong to the group called sags, include an infraorder called the Deinonychosaurs. Yes, and but non-cosaurs are divided into two families. A large and a small. Large family is called dromaeosaurids. The main distinguishing feature of the shotsaurids, it is a large curved claw that was used as a weapon or to climb trees. Tails of the shotobiasaurids were long and richly feathered. Animals could wave tails and side to side like dogs. Tails of shot bears could be used as an aerodynamic rudder when turning on the run. The size of the dromaeosaurids ranged from 60 centimeters to 7 meters in length. Together with the tail, large dromedae hunted in packs as modern wolves. Smaller predators could climb trees like martens and monkeys. Many dromedae ran fast, reaching speeds of up to 70 km/2 kilo-sized Microraptor is the only living known science sebiplane. The animal had 2 pairs of wings on the fore and hind limbs in a gliding flight. The hind wings were located under the front wings. The Microraptor could not take off from the ground, but could only flit from one tree to another. With a loss of height, velociraptors were covered with feathers and weighed no more than 20 kilograms. These predators climbed trees like macaques. By the way, one of relatives of velociraptors, called Cynernetosaurus, was the most ancient lizard with a poisonous bite, most likely. Like modern predatory snakes, Cynernetosaurus used down poison to immobilize the victim and not to kill. The second small family from the group, Demonicov, 0.5 meter to 3 meters weight, could reach up to 60 kilograms. Some types of triodonts laid eggs in the nests of oviraptors. Like modern Coustraudon, is the only dinosaur with the largest brain. The opinion that the triodon began to evolve towards gaining reason if there had not been a catastrophe at the end of the Cretaceous period. Then most likely intelligent life on Earth would have appeared on 50 or 60 million years earlier. A detachment of sauropods. These animals are similar modern giraffes, specialized in eating branches and leaves from the high trees. The size of the Jurassic Macronaria was up to 44 meters, weight up to 200 tons. Titanosaurs replaced brachiosaurids at the beginning of the Cretaceous, which were distinguished by small heads, a wide chest, and a more flexible Brachiosaur. A member of this group is possibly the largest terrestrial animals throughout the history of the Earth. Some small titanosaurs were covered large and not thick bony scales. Diplodocus, which specialized in eating meadow vegetation in the Cretaceous period, fell into decay, and in its middle the sizes finally died out. Cretaceous Diplodocus were up to 20 meters in weight, did not exceed 7 is 1 ton. Ornithopods. These animals were the first in the history of the Earth to learn to chew food. What allowed these creatures to feed on tough vegetation? A small group of cute ornithopods called iguanodonts appeared. These were large animals up to 13 meters in length and up to 6 tons in weight. The giants lost the ability to run fast but have acquired protective device. Probably iguanodonta grazed in large herds and defended themselves from predators. Togothercanontosaurus reached 8 meters in length and weighed about 1 ton. The animal did not have camouflage and danger signals. The Kenetosaurus moved very slowly only on four legs. Both herbivores had an unusually long tail that was used as a weapon. The evolutionary strategy of Tyrannosaurus turned out to be unsuccessful in the Middle Cretaceous period. These animals achieved last and largest superfamily of ornithopods is the Hadrosaurs. Hadrosaurs skull moved both on two and on four legs in Hadrosaurs. The beak on the muzzle was fully formed and of some species. The beak resembled a duck, but in the depths of the mouth it was located up to 1.5 thousands of small chewing teeth that constantly fell out and were replaced by new ones. Hadrosaurs could reach 6 meters in length and weigh up to 23 tons. Some Megasosaurs, for example, Influenzosaurus, instead of crests, grew large fleshy noses. Brachylophosaurus had a peculiar bone cap on its head. Brachylophosaurus and Edmontosaurus often met oncological tumors. Apparently it was a special genetic glitch of these two close genera. Some in the polar regions are considered to be for the winter. Herbivores moved to warmer climates. Marginocephalians are another large group of herbivorous dinosaurs. Part of the Marginocephalians belongs to the inferior ceratopsians, which differ from other dinosaurs with a characteristic beak. Like herbivorous turtles, like ornithopods, ceratopsians were covered with thin scales. Ceratopsians also learned to chew. Normally, grass was also grown in the mouth at the end of the Cretaceous period. Many small interchangeability. The smallest and most primitive family of ceratopsians are Psittacosaurus, only 2 meters long and 20 kilograms in weight. Many predators hunted the cubs of Psittacosaurus, including almost all mammals. So the Asaurs died in the teeth of predators or from natural disasters. Psittacosaurs flourished for the first third of the Cretaceous period, after which they died out at the same time as the Psittacosaurs lived. Similar to them lie Ceratopsia, Ceratops, and Ororacerates. These animals reached a length of no more than known meter. Leptoceratopsids reached 4 meters in length and weighed 200 kilograms on their head. Herbivores had a small bone crest protecting the neck from the bites of predators. 4. And the last thing, numerous and evolutionarily advanced family of ceratopsian ceratopsids. These animals reached 12 minutes length and weighing up to 12 tons. They finally forgot how to walk on 2 legs, and on their heads they grew not only protective collar, but also 3 horns. Only the largest carnivorous dinosaurs dared hunt huge and heavy birds. Even in some cases, adults, the opponent of Psittacosaurus, a subfamily is distinguished at the center of saurians, whose representatives are distinguished by a bizarre collar shape and sometimes the presence of additional horns on it by the brightest owner's beautiful equipment. Where Stereocosaurs had nasal outgrowths, horns, and 6 horn spikes on the back edge of the bone shield of the animal's head. Meters long spikes and horns made Stereocosaurs dangerous for many predators. On this, ceratopsians ended in marginal cephals. There was one small than Forder Pachycephalosaurus, or small bipedal herbivores weighing up to 40 kilograms, were distinguished by a strongly thickened skull that was used by animals in much the same way that modern rams use their horns. Male Pachycephalosaurs probably were among dinosaurs, are the absolute champions of hitting. If such duels really happened, then such a powerful defense was supposed to prevent the fighters from kicking out brains to each other, because the rivals probably faced such force that the loads on each head could be 20 times another suborder call. Adphyriophores, the first representative Esterophorus stegosaurus at the beginning of the Cretaceous, began to die out, and by the Middle Period completely died out. The place of the stegosaurs was taken by the ankylosaurs. They were armored herbivorous living tanks at the very beginning of the Cretaceous period. This infra divided into 2 large families, but up to saurids and ankylosaurids by the standard Ankylosaurus armor. Well, yes, the saurids were light. It protected only the upper back and half of the body, and between the plates when moving, gaps formed the second ankylosaur family. Ankyhybrids, these animals had much more powerful or more many species, had a heavy bone mace at the end of their tail, which they called break the bones of a predatory dinosaur, and if you're lucky to get lucky, Unlike anodosaurid, adult ankylosaurids were practically invulnerable on Ticino-100C reachers, but for this you had to pay less mobility. Adult ankylosaurids were solitary animals. Herds formed. Only young specimens of ankylosaurids reached up to 9 meters in size and weighed up to 6 tons. There are birds already able to fly well that challenge the sky, with more ancient pterosaurs gradually replacing the latter completely. However, some birds had teeth in the Cretaceous period. Apeiroducks, semi-fingered geese, loons, and plovers, almost no different from modern ones. Versions of these birds are the Hesperornis. The first waterfowl, Hesperornis, had 96 teeth. Young teeth grew inside old ones due to changing seasonally. Old teeth fell out. Hesperornis was very similar to the modern loon. To move on land, it was very difficult for this bird to lift the front of the body and push off the earth with the feet of the Hesperorn moved in small leaps. However, in the water the bird felt free. Good hard to avoid his sharp ichthyothon. His contemporaries of the Hesperornis were the size of a dove. Birds flew well. Wings were highly developed, and the sternum had a high keel to which powerful pectoral muscles were attached to the beak. Ichthyosaurus had many small recurved teeth. Small brain of Ichthyornis resembled the brain of reptiles in the late Cretaceous. Toothless birds appear relatives of which flamingos exist in our time. The sky of the Cretaceous period still patrolled by pterosaurs since the Triassic. Pterosaurs have done a long evolutionary path, and now among the flying predators arose many new forms of rhamphorine. He died out at the very beginning of the Cretaceous period. Remained only pterodactyls. The first family of pterodactyls is osteodactylites with duck beaks inside which teeth were hidden. The wingspan was 5 meters. Charodorni, the wingspan could reach 12 meters. They differentiate a characteristic vertical ridge at the end of the beak. To the giant ornid Hairus, a whole series of walks with dinosaurs of the Tyrantodontida is dedicated. Towings up to 9 meters had a large and sometimes bizarre giant tailless reptile. Pteranodon and the Pteranodontidae family flew over the ocean and fed on fish. Pteranodon, one of the most highly developed pterosaurs. Probligents used their huge wings with a span of up to 18 meters to freely soar above the ocean. Part of the fish caught in the sea was in a special throat bag to feed their cubs, where for an hour the motoids were comparatively small toothy pterodactyls. This pterodactyl, like a flamingo, roamed fine shallow waters, filtered water through a large beak, and filtered out crustaceans, which the younger reptiloids, with a wingspan of up to 5 meters 8 had a characteristic. Beaks are long and sharp at the end but strong and massive at the base. Younger reptiloids specialized in eating shellfish, crabs, sea urchins, and other similar animals among the young reptiloids. It is not Microlaptorus that stands out. Moved to the forest, reduced to the size of a sparrow, and practically did not distinguishable from a small bird. This pterodactyl did not quickly die out, having withstood competition with real small birds with a wingspan of up to 5 meters. They differentiate a huge meter-long crest of a couple of catfish on their heads. As many as dorcids with a wingspan of up to 14 meters and weighing up to 250 kilograms were the most advanced marinepterodactyls with long beaks and aerodynamically ideal body shape. Quetzalcoatl was the largest flying creature of all time. This giant pterodactyl did not fly very well and led the life of a stork and no albatross. Now back to the last large group of Cretaceous archosaurs, that Crocodilomorph Cetalotasuhi, up to 6 meters in length, died out at the very beginning. Mila and small meter primitive Pratozoics gradually died out, but nevertheless survived until the end of the Cretaceous period. The place of the Protosuchians and early extinct swineworts were occupied on the Tizuca. These are also land crocodiles, but slightly more advanced, arranged in length on the pelvis, reached up to 4 meters, and to be predators and mainly ate fruits. nuts, and roots was a Mesozoic counterpart miracle, and occupying the ecological niche of foxes and jackals. Notozooi reached up to 10 meters in length and are considered direct ancestors. Modern crocodiles. Notozooi almost did not differ from living descendants. The largest of the Nizukov is considered to be a 10 meters. Stomatosuchus abandoned the predatory lifestyle and began to eat plankton. Possibly Stomatosuchus. Barely Spinosaurus. Among the Cretaceous Sauropterygium lioness proportion was Plesiosaurs, with long necks and small heads that fed small fish and shellfish. These animals could not swim quickly, but were very maneuverable. Plesiosaurs served as a prototype of the Loch Ness Monster. But unlike this mythical character, plesiosaurs could not protrude their heads high from water and stare around, just as a floating person cannot lean out off waist-deep water and look around. This is the largest family of Cretaceous plesiosaur animals, up to 14 tons, most full-length scaled reptiles from a large group Lepidosaurus morphs. Mosasaurs are very large marine lizards that lived in Cretaceous seas. Predators. Giants occupied the ecological niche of saltwater crocodiles, and where at the top of the food chain they were very aggressive animals. In Menomosaurs, on the bones are found traces of heel fractures and bites clearly obtained in fights with their own kind. Mosasaurina up to 15 meters in length. They are considered typical, as it were, reference mosasaurs occupying an average position for most characteristics when paying carpine up to 7 meters. These were relatively small mosasaurs fed on small fish and mollusks whose dimensions reached 17 meters. Predators hunted. The largest, for example, Hanosaurus, ate prey. Even cedar scientists analyzed the remains of one Telesaurus. It is known for sure that the predator ate before death. This shark, several bony fish, bird Hesperornis lycia, penguin, and a small mosasaurus of another species. The second half of the squamosal or reptiles of the Cretaceous period were lizards, as well as newly separated from them snakes and vukoki. At the same time, the first crow-like Ecogonus had a size up to 1 meter long with a tail, and was the first raven. On Zimrang was the first iguana lizard that could perform planting flight from tree to tree. Ichthyosaurs gradually died out during the Cretaceous period, and finally died out at the end of the period. Q turtles practically did not differ from modern sizes. Cretaceous turtles ranged up to 4.5 meters. Weight reached 2 tons. Most species. The first animal-like animals appeared in the Triassic period more than 200 years ago. Million years ago, these were small, timid animals that spent most of time in search of insects that have eaten over the past 100 million years. Animal-like evolution almost did not touch in the first half of the Cretaceous period in the environment of these inconspicuous mammals. Serious evolutionary processes began to occur. First, marsupial and placental mammals appeared to these groups animals at the end of the Cretaceous period, and began the Cenozoic era to become the successors of the dinosaurs. The marsupial branch gave birth to almost modern opossums, and the egg-laying branch of almost modern platypus. Something happened at the end of the Cretaceous period, very strange and mysterious. In the seas and oceans, disappeared overnight, and coins plesiosaurs, ichthyosaurs, and mosasaurs on land. Suddenly all dinosaurs died out, and there weren't any left in the sky after the end of the Cretaceous period. Not a single pterosaur. Scientists have been puzzling over the solution for decades. Mysteries of this mass extinction. It was the second large-scale extinction of life forms on our Earth in the entire history of life on the planet. There are many hypotheses regarding the causes of the extinction of dinosaurs. Some researchers believe that the main reason for this was the mammals, of which a lot appeared at the end of the Cretaceous period. According to other researchers, the main cause of mass death dinosaurs was a dramatic change in the physics of geographical conditions at the end of the Cretaceous period. Of cooling and drought led to a sharp decrease in the number of plants on Earth, as a result of which giant dinosaurs began to feel a lack of food after herbivores extinct and predators. In addition, It is assumed that in addition to what was happening global climate change, the Earth collided with a giant asteroid to the final extinction. Many species like the video. Put your finger up and leave comments. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so, and also hit the bell so as not to miss new and interesting videos from the Real Unreal channel.